Well, Gonzaga and Michigan State are set to take the national stage Friday afternoon. It'll be 3:30 Pacific time, 6:30 Eastern time. Of course, they are playing in the Armed Force Classic, which will take place on top of the aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln in Coronado, California. The Armed Force Classic is a game that's put on for an amazing cause. It looks absolutely incredible. I don't know if there's a better visual setting for a college basketball game possible, but this game does present some technical issues right off the bat. I think it's something we got to bring up. We've been watching the weather forecast all week. At this point, it's scheduled to be forecasted to be a clear day, about 67 degrees. But when you're playing outside and on the ocean, I mean, there are some inherited issues with that. I mean, Draymond Green on Twitter, when this game was announced, said, "This is tragic. Give the veterans a game inside a gym. It makes for much better and safer basketball. Playing in that game was incredible for the meaning, but the game was awful." Of course, he played in the last one, the Michigan State played in, I believe, when they played North Carolina. And it's just referring to the condensation that sets in on the court. It was really some safety issues for players. And it got progressively worse after sunset. And of course, sunset for Friday's game will be about an hour and 20 minutes after tip-off.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the first. I mean, it's honestly kind of funny with all the football games over the years, looking into the weather ahead of the game, and then this one time for a basketball game, we're doing that. The other day I was, texting you the weather report. It looks like the temp, of course, will fall over the game. The humidity will go up, which could relate to some of the issues that we've seen with condensation in the past. I think a lot of people were kind of surprised to see these aircraft carrier games, or just one so far, but if this one goes well, we'll see more. A lot of people were pretty surprised to see this come back. It kind of came out of the blue. So this game on Friday will be 10 years after the last completed aircraft carrier game to the day. That was between Syracuse and San Diego State. And that one, Jim Boeheim was on record saying it was pretty windy. It was a tough environment to play in. And that's one of the two men's games that's been completed on an aircraft carrier deck. The other one being the one that you mentioned with Draymond Green and Michigan State against North Carolina. Mm-hmm. So interesting to see it back. And I mean, for Zag fans, this definitely calls into the experience that they had in Okinawa a few years back, where they played the game over there on a military. We weren't able to get past halftime, all the condensation issues on the floor. That being said, the weather looks fine for this game. I think it'll play out okay. I think it'll definitely have the same issues that we've seen in the past, with the 3-point shooting being a little bit down outdoors, and if there's any wind, which it looks like it'll be light, if there is any, of course that'll have an effect. But I mean, it's an exciting atmosphere, exciting matchup, and early in the season, you couldn't really ask for much more. Two marquee programs, two great coaches going at it in a great environment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this will be in this early season. It's kind of been an odd scheduling season for college basketball. Normally, we get a lot of like tip-off classics and things like that. We really haven't seen that this season. So this is going to be the biggest game of the college basketball season so far. You mentioned the Zags playing in Okinawa. That was, of course, in a military gym, which is the backup plan for this game. If for some reason they can't play on the aircraft carrier, they do plan on keeping it on base, which again, great for the service members, but those gyms are not necessarily designed to hold the amount of people that this game is going to bring in. So you hope that whether the game takes place on the aircraft carrier, obviously we hope it does for just the visual aspect and the experience for the players. We hope they've learned some things and can put on a little bit safer event for everybody there. Both teams are coming off a win in their season opener on Monday night. Gonzaga beat North Florida 104-63, and Michigan State beat Northern Arizona 73-55. Of course, entering the season, Gonzaga is coming off again their 7th consecutive Sweet 16 last year, where they lost to Arkansas. And Michigan State entered the year losing in the second round of the tournament last year to Duke. That was a game they actually had a lead relatively late in the game before Duke went on a really good run. But overall, really good season for Michigan State last year. We know Tom Izzo. We know how well his teams execute. This is one of the best coaches in the country, year in and year out. Sometimes you look at the players or the rankings. Like this year, you get caught up. They're an unranked team. it's just not something that you can look into because this is a Tom Izzo led team. We know they're going to execute well. Of course, he has a career record of 664 wins and 265 losses, and a all-time record against Gonzaga of 4-1. Of course, last game was in 2011. That was in the kennel, actually. And props to Tom Izzo. Let's just take a quick second. That was one of the first like really big marquee programs that agreed to come to the kennel. Gonzaga did not get a lot of those. You know, they played a lot of teams, but a lot of those teams or a lot of those games were neutral site games. So you just got to give him props on that. He's always kind of play anybody anywhere type coach, and you absolutely love that. The Zags lone win, of course, came in 2005, the Maui Invitational. If you don't remember that game, go YouTube it right now. That was an incredible game, triple overtime. Adam Morrison versus Shannon Brown, and both of them went absolutely wild.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on Izzo there. I mean, great coach. He's been doing this forever. You know, I kind of almost didn't like seeing them unranked because, you know, that's going to mean that it's just going to give them more motivation as time goes on over the season. I mean, Izzo has done this so many times before. He's taken teams that looked like they were relatively mediocre and turned them into Final Four contenders, if not gotten them to a Final Four. So, I mean, nothing to worry about for Michigan State on that front. They've got the talent. You mentioned their loss in the tournament last year to Duke. I mean, they really unfortunately kind of got the full Duke experience in that game. They kind of got the best out of all of those Duke players, especially coming down the stretch. So unfortunate, but they're going to rebound fine this year. I think that you know, when you look back at that 2005 game, it's funny you mentioned Tom Izzo being willing to play a tough non-conference schedule, come to the kennel and play the Zags, because he actually has a similar quote to the Mark Few's quote about playing, you know, anyone, anytime, anywhere. You know, he said that about the time that they played the Zags in 2005. And Michigan State, year in, year out, has a great non-conference schedule. Of course, as Gonzaga fans, we love to pride ourselves on that. But I mean, Michigan State is right there on that same level, you know, if not better, with the non-conference scheduling. So you love to see that every year, that he'll put his guys on the court in games like that. And yeah, speaking of big games, I mean, you go back to that 2005 Classic. I mean, for us Zag fans, it's hard not to crack a smile thinking of that one. That was really like the post Cinderella Gonzaga introduction to the main stage, where they were playing these big games in Maui. They got the nice win against Maryland the day before that. And then that battle between Adam Morrison, Shannon Brown, Mo Ager. I mean, hard to forget that. That was just an all out knockout battle, you know, just going deep, three overtimes. Unfortunately, the Zags didn't finish it off the next day against UConn. But I mean, that was like the really kind of breaking into being a legitimate, you know, powerhouse type program, you know, from our perspective.
Yeah, it really helped put them on the map. And I mean, Shannon Brown, one of my favorite just basketball players in general, but college players in particular. I mean, that guy was a human highlight reel, and that was just a great game. And hopefully we get another just absolute battle with those knockout blows on Friday. I know everybody wants to see that, but let's jump into some matchups that we are likely to see on Friday. So starting at the point guard position, we're going to have Gonzaga running out Nolan Hickman versus Tyson Walker for Michigan State. Hickman, of course, is a 6'2" sophomore point guard. He was ranked number 33 coming out of high school just 2 years ago. Of course, he sat behind Andrew Nembhard, who's in the NBA now, sat behind him last year. You know, early on last season, he played a bit more, and then he saw his role kind of diminish. We know how Mark Few likes to tighten up those lineups as he goes into the tournament. And Walker, of course, transferred to Michigan State 2 years ago. He is a 6'1" senior point guard. He had 6 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds against Northern Arizona. This is going to be a battle, man. This is really, you know, Nolan Hickman has been given the keys to this team this year, so he's stepping into a big role. And Tyson Walker is a veteran senior point guard with a ton of experience.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the theme is going to be consistent for me across all these guard matchups, really, and it's going to be a great test for the Zags. The experience and the physicality brought by the Michigan State guards like Walker is going to be a really tough matchup for Hickman. I mean, I think Hickman will be fine. You know, he's going to be coming into his own, you know, over this early part of the season, but it's going to be a really tough matchup for him. You know, we saw him do okay against Tennessee with a tough guard matchup, and this is just another really good tough matchup for him right out of the gate.
Yeah, absolutely. You love these early tests for him. You know, and for Michigan State fans, if you haven't seen a lot of Nolan Hickman Nolan Hickman is a very, very crafty point guard. He's really, really good in transition. He's got a good handle. His change of pace is great. He's a capable shooter, not quite the level of shooter that Tyson Walker is, but he is a capable shooter. He will let it go if you leave him open. And Tyson Walker, for me, this is a really important matchup defensively. And Nolan Hickman has shown some really good defensive flashes, but Tyson Walker is going to test him this whole game. Tyson Walker shot 47% from three last year on 74 attempts. He's going to put pressure on the Zags in the ball screen game, and we've seen that through the exhibition games kind of be an area of almost a little bit concern for Gonzaga, just their switches and rotations up top. So Tyson Walker's going to test that. And he is no slouch defensively himself. He's got very quick feet. Really, really going to be a good matchup. And obviously we know, the point guard position is a pivotal matchup in any game. So that's going to be a great one. Moving to the shooting guards, we have Rasir Bolton versus AJ Hoggard. Of course, this is one of the Zags leaders. You talk about veteran leadership on this team. That is Rasir Bolton. He comes in, he's a 6'3" senior, had 11 points, 3 assists, 2 rebounds on Monday. And AJ Hoggard, 6'4" junior, 9 points, 8 assists, and 1 rebound on Monday. This is going to be a really good matchup. AJ's 6'4". He's got plenty of size out there, good player defensively, and he's really going to test Rasir Bolton out on the perimeter.
Yeah, this one's an interesting matchup, definitely contrasting player types. Hoggard more of a physical type player than Bolton, who's more of a finesse, long range shooter kind of guy. So I think that'll be an interesting matchup and just another good test for a Zag guard going against a good defender. And it's going to be all good defending guards out there for Michigan State. So the Zags will have to really be ready to attack the rim if the chance is there, take the open shot if it's there. It's not, they're going to have a little bit more it's going to be a little bit tougher to make those decisions early in the season, but hopefully they're up to the task. And I think that this will be a really tough test from the Michigan State guards defensively.
Definitely. No, I'm looking forward to that. Hoggard is just a fun player to watch, man. He's got a good handle. He's got plus speed, really good mid-range shooter, doesn't take a lot of threes, but really aggressive to the rim. And again, we talk about things that we've mentioned already in our season preview for the Zags. The Zags perimeter defense has to be on point this year. They do not have a Chet Holmgren down low. They do not have the rim protection of years past. So really, those drives have to be stopped early. If you give Hoggard 10 feet of run at Drew Timme, that's just not going to work for you all night. Hoggard's going to win that more than he loses that. So that's, really something I'm looking forward to is how can we stop his drive? And of course, he along with Walker are both great facilitators too. So, that's where if you sell out on those drives, they're going to kick it out. They're going to find guys. Rotations have to be on point. And for Michigan State fans, Bolton is the Zags' best shooter without a doubt. Shot 46% last year on 139 attempts, 3 of 4 from 3 Monday night. He can get hot in a hurry, but he's a guy that will let the game come to him. So even when he's being quiet, maybe early in the game, you cannot sleep on him because he can really just blow the lid off a game. Back-to-back possessions very, very quickly, seemingly out of nowhere. At the small forward position, though, we're going to have Julian Strother versus Malik Hall. Of course, Julian Strother is a 6'7" junior and really stepping into a role this year where I think he's going to be asked to be, probably the second leading scorer behind Drew Timme. And there's going to be nights where he will be the leading scorer. He had 16 points on Monday night, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. And then Malik Hall, 6'8" senior. So again, this is a very, very veteran Michigan State starting lineup. You have to realize that. He had 5 points Monday night with 7 rebounds and 2 assists. This is a great matchup. We've said it all the way through, but the guard matchups are going to be really fun to watch this night. And Malik Hall does a lot of things really well. I think he imposes his size incredibly well, and that's really going to test Julian Strother defensively.
Yeah, if you could come up with one of the toughest matchups, for Strother right out of the gate, this is probably it. You got a guy that's physical, and from the Gonzaga, fan crew, from what we see is Strother kind of came into his own last year shooting the ball. He got a lot more comfortable. The next step for him in terms of becoming an NBA player is showing that he can play physical more consistently and be a little more efficient with that. So this will be a good test for him on both sides. You know, I mean, if the 3-point shooting isn't there with the outdoor conditions, or if he's just having an off night, then what's he going to do to compensate? Is he going to be able to get to the rim against Hall? Is he going to be able to stop Hall from doing whatever he wants offensively? So that's a really tough matchup for Strother. And yeah, it'll be the next step in him kind of becoming a, college star type player or an NBA guy will be kind of how he does in matchups like this.
Definitely. I think it's easy, when you come into a college, your college career, you come in, you're a shooter, it's easy to kind of shy away from that physicality. And early this season through the exhibition games and Monday night, we've seen Strother, I think, definitely make it more of a focus to get to the rim. He's making more of those physical plays. But he hasn't done it against anybody like Malik Hall. So, and Malik Hall in transition as well is really, really difficult. He's got a great vertical. He can get up and finish. Just a guy of that size in transition with his speed, it's going to be tough. The Zags have to get back early to have any chance here. And moving to the power forward position, this is a really interesting matchup for me. Because on the Gonzaga side, you, of course, have Anton Watson. He's a 6'8" senior, do-it-all glue guy for the Zags. He had 10 points Monday night with 4 rebounds, 4 assists, and 4 steals. This guy has been around the program a long time. He's battled through some injuries, had a great freshman season, and then, of course, dislocated his shoulder, had a rehab during the offseason, kind of set him back. He's finally kind of getting back into himself here, had a whole full healthy offseason this year. But he's going against arguably the best scorer for Michigan State in Joey Hauser. Joey Hauser, of course, is a transfer a couple years ago to Michigan State. He is a 6'9" senior. Again, the veteran leadership all the way through. Had 18 points, 10 rebounds, and 1 assist Monday night. He's been an elite college shooter his entire career. And we know Watson wants to stay down low to help defensively for Timmy. But this matchup is really going to put a lot of pressure on that because we know Hauser's going to live on the perimeter.
Yeah, I mean, we like to think of Watson as somebody that can defend sort of inside out, defend maybe the 2, 3, 4 position, in a pinch. And this will really test him on that. He definitely has a propensity to want to kind of stay down low more to guard. He'll have to be out on the perimeter more for this one. It'll test their rotations in every way and sort of the guard big handoff rotations too. So that'll be a really tough matchup for Watson. And Watson on his own, I mean, he's kind of coming into his own offensively. He looks a lot more comfortable this year. So I think that'll be an interesting matchup to see how Michigan State defends it as well. I mean, you go back, 10 years to the last matchup between the Zags and Michigan State. I believe only one player from Michigan State was in double figures, and that was Draymond Green having his big game. If their box score looks like that this time, I think it'll be Hauser that has the big game. If I had to pick anyone on Michigan State that was going to do it, I mean, I don't think I'm going out on a limb saying that, but I do think that his game, his pick and pop game, really can present some serious problems for the Zags as they kind of get into figuring out these defensive rotations early on this year.
Yeah, definitely. I mentioned it earlier with Walker, but the Zags, how they've defended the screen game so far this year has definitely been just a little bit of maybe where that defense is lacking. Of course, you saw it, I think, improve against North Florida, but this is a matchup on an entirely different scale. So we're going to see really what that improvement was. Was it just based on the team, or are they starting to figure some things out? Because if you do not, I mean, Joey Hauser in the pick and pop game, he shot 46%, was 42%. Let's see here. I think it was 42% last year, if I remember correctly, but around there for his career. So, I mean, he's a great player, and we know that's what he's going to look for. But he also, you mentioned it, shooting on these aircraft carriers is incredibly difficult. Mm-hmm. If you're a shooter on a basketball court, you look for reference points, and that's why everybody plays better at home. It's the gym you practice in every week. You kind of just know where you are without having to look at the rim. You lose those points, and there is, hardly any backdrop behind these backboards on an aircraft carrier. So if anybody were to go off and have a great shooting night, it could very well be Joey Hauser, and it's just going to make it that much more impressive. So at the center position, we're going to have Drew Timme versus Mady Sissoko. I think everybody in the country knows who Drew Timmy is at this point, but he's a 6'10 senior. He had 22 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, and 3 steals Monday night, which was good to see. Not really known as a defensive player, but I think he does know this year he's got to step it up a little bit. And Matty Sissoko, a 6'9 junior, stepping into a starting role this year. He had 4 points and 6 rebounds Monday night, averaged about 5 minutes per game this year. So he is really being thrown straight into the fire here, drawing Drew Timmy in just his second game as a starter.
Yeah, I mean, we know what Timmy is. I mean, great back to the basket player, and Sissoko seems, he has the body to be equipped to handle that. But I mean, of course, Drew Timmy brings a whole other array of post moves and moves off of those post moves that'll test anybody, especially somebody that's quadrupling their minutes per game, from the last couple of years. So we'll see how Sissoko handles that. I mean, offensively, Sissoko just kind of going to take what's given, especially with the guards and the guys that are going to be handling for them. They're going to get plenty of shot attempts out of their guards. So Sissoko is just going to kind of, I think, sit down there and take what's given offensively. But how he plays defensively is going to mean absolutely everything in this game. If he's up to the task and frustrating Timmy, the 3-point shooting isn't there because of the outdoor conditions or otherwise, and all of a sudden the Zags are in big trouble. So I think that a lot as far as the starters go, a lot's going to rest on how Sissoko plays and how he's up to the task of guarding Timmy.
Definitely. I agree with that. He's got a 7'3" wingspan, Sissoko does. So, like I mentioned, he is a physical presence. And his per 40 stats, he's averaging about 3.5 blocks per 40. So, statistically, we know he is a good rim protector. This is going to be a great chance for him to show it, because we know in a game like this, the Zags are going to try to get to the rim. So his play, as you said, is going to be incredibly important for Michigan State. He does well. They're going to make this game really, really grimy, just to say the least. So moving into the benches, both these teams have ran relatively deep. Obviously, just don't have much to go off of this season, but Monday night, both of them really ran 4 guys off the bench. For Gonzaga, that is transfers Malachi Smith and Efton Reed, both very 2 pivotal guys off the bench, and Hunter Salas and Dominic Harris, which are 2 highly, highly touted players. Hunter Salas, of course, is coming into his sophomore year. He was a top 30 recruit. Dominic Harris didn't play last year, had a foot injury right before the season. Just really unfortunate. He couldn't make it back last year, but he was a top 50 recruit, if I remember correctly, just a couple years ago. But Malachi Smith is the guy I really look forward off the bench. He is last year's SoCon Player of the Year, transferred to Gonzaga after averaging 20 points a game. And for Michigan State, you have Jackson Kohler. He's a freshman, the number 62 ranked recruit. He had 6 points and 9 boards on Monday. Pierre Brooks, who was the number 61 recruit in the nation just 2 years ago, had 14 points, 4 of 7 from 3. Really nice looking jump shot from him. Trey Holloman, freshman, 4-star recruit, number 82 in the nation, was last year's Minnesota Gatorade Player of the Year. I think Gonzaga knows quite well how a Minnesota Player of the Year can affect your team. And Jaden Akins, who is 8 weeks off of foot surgery. So that's, by the way, love to see him making it back. He is currently still ramping up, but he had 6 points on Monday as well. So both these teams can run relatively deep and bring some talented guys off the bench.
Yeah, that'll make this matchup even more interesting. They both like to run 8 or 9 deep. I mean, the Zags bench, you got Smith, who might not, be coming off the bench for long. Reed, he's going to be an integral part for them inside this year, as good of a rim protector as they have. Salas, sort of the defensive stopper on the perimeter, and his offensive game's, going to keep coming along over the year. And then Harris, who, is going to be a 3-point sniper, a good perimeter defender, but he's still kind of in the same boat as Akins, kind of working back off an injury. But we'll see more and more of Harris as the year goes on. So definitely both teams with plenty of guard depth coming off the bench. I mean, for MSU, I think Kohler is going to be big in this one, helping out to guard Timmy. Like, he's going to have to spell Sissoko. So, I mean, he's going to be as big of a piece to this game for Michigan State as anybody. And then, of course, as you mentioned, you got Brooks, you got Holloman, you got Akins. I mean, they just got plenty of depth coming off their bench, and they're guys that are not afraid to shoot.
Definitely, and Jackson Kohler, I mean, that's a player I watch, and instantly I think Gonzaga players or Gonzaga fans are going to see him and just feel like they recognize him, because he looks like he has a Gonzaga game. He really does. He's a very fundamental player. He's smart with the basketball out there. I think he can step out a little bit, stretch the defense, but like you said, his ability to help down low, being really the lone big that they want to bring off the bench. We know how Drew Timmy can affect teams with foul pressure. I mean, just Monday night, I think Drew Timmy drew like 6 fouls throughout that game.
Yeah.
And obviously, if that's the case Friday, that's going to put Jackson Kohler on the floor a lot more. So, when you're only bringing one big off the bench, you really have to be able to kind of control that foul issues down low. So we're going to see how they handle that, because that will definitely be pivotal for them. So let's get to the predictions, man. I think this is the part that everybody wants to know. How is this game going to go? How is it going to play out? When I look at this game, we've mentioned it multiple times. We don't know how the shooting's going to be. One thing for me right away, this is not new for Gonzaga. Michigan State probably knows this. Our fans probably know this, but Gonzaga wants to get out and run. One of the biggest ways they do that is rebounding the ball. When they rebound, you're going to see their guards are gone, and they're going to look to outlet the ball. So Michigan State has to be active on the boards come Friday night. Obviously, we hope we're going to see some shooting. We hope Bolton can get going. But for me, I think there's really 2 points that I think are Gonzaga's key to this game. Of course, in every single game, it is Drew Timmy. He is the unquestioned leader on this team. We know we want to see him go off and get 20 plus. That really is what, generates this team and gets them going. But Malachi Smith, I think Malachi Smith is going to be a really, really important piece for Gonzaga on Friday. He is a very, very strong athletic player. He can fight through contact. Really, really nice mid-range game and just finishing at the rim. And in a game where shooting's questionable, I think that's going to be an issue. And I think he's going to really test that secondary unit of Michigan State. All in all, I think we're going to see a close first half as guys get settled in, get used to the court. But I think just the transition game of Gonzaga is going to take over late. I think Malachi Smith is going to have a big game. I see him going for, 18 plus on Friday. I think Gonzaga comes out, wins this game 78-66. Zach, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think that it's funny you mentioned the transition game. Zags like to get out in transition. I mean, your first pass in transition is going to be a missed 3-point shot a lot of the time. So I think that if the 3-point shooting is as bad as it's trended on these aircraft carrier games, that's going to mean transition is going to be a huge part of this game, and just getting back is going to be huge for both teams. So I think that, you bring up a good point with Malachi Smith, and that kind of gets in the theme of, if the shooting isn't going to be there, what are guys going to do off of that? We know that Michigan State has guards that are equipped to get to the rim. And with the Zags, I mean, we feel like they can do that, but I'd say the jury is still kind of out on their physicality attacking the rim. Not so much Smith. We've seen more volume from him, but with Strother,
Sure.
Hickman, Bolton, how are they going to play being, in a more physical game? So I think that it'll come down to that. I think Michigan State will get a lot of what they want out of this game. They're going to rebound well. They're going to kind of muddy up the game. But I do think that the Zags will find a way to muscle it out with Timmy. I think Timmy's going to have a big game down low. I think at least a couple of the Zag guards will really show up. And I think the Zags will end up winning this one 74-69. Roughly the same margin that I would go with indoors, but I'm just going to lop a few points off because of the aircraft carrier aspect.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It's going to be a good game. We know that. Friday, 3:30 aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, Gonzaga, Michigan State. This will be the best game of the young college basketball season, and we are looking forward to just an absolute barn burner of a game.
Yeah, let's see a good one. First real game of the year. Let's go.
All right.